The Zen Dog by J.P. O'Brien. In a serene, rural village surrounded by bamboo groves in the Kochi prefecture of Japan, a promising and bright young boy named Kazuki was studying the teachings of Zen Buddhism. Through meditation, he was practicing to embrace the present moment, while trying to detach from the harmless past and the unknown future. All of this practice was done in the company of his loving and inquisitive dog, a special red Shiba Inu named Hana. The two of them had been quite inseparable since they were both very small. One morning, they set out for their daily walk through the slender bamboo shoots that reached skywards, creating intricate patterns of light and shadow on the crunchy fallen leaves on the ground. As they walked, Kazuki focused on his senses, trying to remain attentive to the tranquil sounds around them, the gentle rustling of the wind through the leaves and the pleasant chirping of birds in the trees, as well as the crisp footsteps as they moved along the path. He decided the time was right to impart some of his newfound spiritual wisdom onto his trusted four-legged companion. "Hana," he began, "have you ever noticed how content the birds are with their simple nests in the trees? How content they are to sing their songs without a care in the world?" The dog continued trotting after her owner and tilted her head at the question. Kazuki went on. "Zen is about appreciating the present moment for what it is, and for enjoying the simplicity of life. It is trying to let go of attachments and desires, and instead learning to find peace within." As he spoke, Hana wagged her tail at the words, which Kazuki took to indicate a certain understanding of their importance. This made him smile as they walked. Eventually the bamboo cleared, and they found themselves at a pond. They stopped at the edge of it. Small fish could be seen gliding in groups beneath its still surface, which Kazuki pointed out through the crystal reflection of the sky above. He continued his lesson. "There is a need to understand the impermanence of things. That is, everything constantly changes, but is all still a part of the same thing." Hana peered into the water to watch the swimming fish, and the tip of her curious nose lightly touched the surface, causing ripples to float outwards in perfect circles. Kazuki leant down and patted her head, then explained that life's changes were to be embraced, like those circular ripples, for that is what makes life what it is. They moved on. Soon they came to a fence which separated their trail from a meadow, in which they could see a cow peacefully grazing on the lush grass some distance away. Kazuki rested his hands on top of the fence and looked into the meadow to observe the cow. Hana stopped beside him and similarly watched. Kazuki, without removing his eyes from the meadow, explained that the best way to tend to your cows is to allow them the space to roam, to explore, to be mischievous if they like. "So it is with people," he went on. "Let them do what they want and watch them without trying to control them." Hana's attention, meanwhile, had wandered elsewhere. She was meandering around to sniff in the grass clustered beside the fence posts and to explore the myriad scents that had been left there. "That would be the second worst policy," Kazuki lectured. "But the worst policy would be to ignore them altogether. The same is also true with the images in your mind as you sit and practice meditation. Let them come, let them go. They will be under control." He looked to where his dog had been to see that she had wandered off while he was speaking, but when a silence returned, she trotted back and sat attentively at her master's side, her short snout pointing up towards his face and her tongue flopping out with a gentle pant. Kazuki, feeling that his lecture was indeed being received and understood, smiled down at her with love in his eyes. They continued with their walk. Before long, they found some pleasant shade cast by a peepal tree that overlooked another field of vibrant green. The mid-morning sun had been heating the air, and the two of them were now in need of a short break, so Kazuki decided to sit and practice meditation there. He put himself into a seated pose at the foot of the tall tree. He explained as he was doing so that in this posture, his left foot touches his right thigh, that his right foot touches his left thigh, and so he doesn't know what side is which. Actually, either may be the left side or the right side. It is all the same, he concluded. Hana had settled beside him and was yawning wide enough to show her back teeth. Before long, her eyes began drooping closed. As he sat with crossed legs and a straight back, Kazuki looked down and watched the gentle rising and falling of his dog's hunched shoulders as she lay curled into a ball. Their movement followed the peaceful flow of her breath and brought to him a sense of calm. He observed in a quiet whisper that when we enter the state of seated meditation, of zazen, there is no world, no mind, no body, just a swinging door in the throat that moves from one way to the other as we inhale and exhale. His words floated away on the wind, and Hana opened a single eye to look, before closing it again, huffing contentedly and resuming her rest. Kazuki internally commended her for not trying to attain something, for just sitting in the calmness of her mind without relying on anything. Hana's ear flapped unconsciously, which brought another blissful smile to Kazuki's face. After they had sat for a while, Hana stirred, slowly rose, stretched out, and then began to plod around. Sensing that it was now time to move on, Kazuki gradually worked himself out of his posture and eased himself up to his feet. After a few moments, he resumed the walk, accompanied by the happy Hana at his side. Shortly after, they came upon a small waterfall and made their way cautiously onto the stepping stones on the lower bank to take a look, as the cool water sloshed pleasantly around their weary feet. They looked up and watched the higher parts spilling over the edge. Then their eyes followed the water downward as it landed just beside them in a splash, before continuing on its way, having rejoined the river. "Look, Hana," Kazuki said, motioning above with a pointed finger. "There is water in the upper part of the river, and water in the lower part of the river. As the water cascades over the edge, it may be individual droplets of water, but water is water whether it is separated into drops or not." The patient dog stood beside him, but seemed to be more interested in a dragonfly that was curiously flitting around her head. "Our life and death are the same thing," Kazuki went on. "When we are alive, we are the individual drops of water. We have a sense of individuality. But when the water returns to its original oneness with the river, down here, it no longer has any individual feeling to it. It resumes its oneness, finds composure, as do we. We rejoin the universe. That is Zen." They stood in quiet contemplation for a few moments, watching the waterfall and listening to its sound. Then they turned and began to head back to the village. Kazuki admired Hana as she kept pace alongside, pleased at her for having listened to his lessons. "You've learned well, Hana," he said. "You are a true Zen master." Her eyes looked into his, and her mouth opened in a smile. They continued marching on, before Kazuki interrupted the silence once more. "Don't forget, Hana. If you see the Buddha, kill him." You have been listening to JP O'Brien Stories. For more, visit patreon.com/JP O'Brien Stories.